this is all the flare fat I was talking about, which protects the inner organs. What you can do if you want to take that out is just sort of score down here, and then if you get a lead on it, as I call it, there, just take your time, and then you can take it out one piece, you see, which is always very nice. And my father, my late great father, who was an amazing butcher, started at 14, left school at 14, working for my grandfather, who was also a butcher, who started the business in 1931. When we got the venison from Windsor Great Park and the joints, he'd always keep the flare fat and sort of tidy it up a bit. If you imagine a joint of venison, he'd put that on the top and then tie that on to keep it moist while it was cooking. But, you know, because venison is so lean, so we try not to waste anything we can here. But it's too, you know, dare I say it, a lot of these big manufacturers' sausages in the supermarkets, that would just all go in, you know, head to tail, in a machine, in a grinder. You'd be eating that, which is not a nice thing to eat, really. It's not a nice fat, the flare fat. There we go. So we go around here and we mark out, this is the loin of pork here, and I want to mark out a nice sort of end for the chop. So I make a mark here, I'll show you. So these are the pork chops here, can you see? So I've marked that there. So there's a little tail on the end of the loin pork chop. Look at that, beautiful. And then you go to the top, there's a little round bone here. You go to the top of that bone there, flush with there, and again, I talk about this quite a lot in butchery, but a parallel line. I want to come down here fairly straight, can you see? So it's a railway track there, and then I get my saw, if I can find it, here we go. And we just saw down here, and what you do, you put your hand underneath. You're not going to cut your hand, because obviously there's fat and there's meat underneath it, but it just, can you see, it just lifts the bone up, so it makes it easier to saw. So as I go down, I'm moving my hand down with it. It's perfectly safe, you're not going to hurt yourself. There we go, gone through all the bones, go back over it with my knife. Use a steak knife for this, and again, I'm not standing here, I'm just going to stand to the side in case it slips, and we don't want to cut ourselves. So I've gone through, there's another bone here you can saw straight through, and again, keep this finger on your saw tucked in. It's always a good thing, because on other parts of the animal, if you leave it out, you can hit a bone and you get a bone splinter down your finger, and it's the most painful thing in the world. In actual fact, you'll only do it once, because then you'll learn to keep that tucked in. It's a bit like cutting yourself. When you start the trade, you will have a few nicks here and there, but it's a good thing really, because you sort of learn, oh, that's painful, I'm not going to do that again. Whereas nowadays, you'd get an apprentice in and they would put a glove on, a metal glove, and of course they'd spend 2 years just hitting this glove, and then when they take it off, then they start cutting themselves because they're not used to it. So it's a good thing to, dare I say it, nick yourself a couple of times, hopefully not too badly when you're learning, because then you know, all right, all I have to do is keep my left hand out of the way and I'm not going to cut myself. Okay, so there we go. That's what we call a long loin in the trade, where you get the neck end or shoulder and the loin together. Long loin of pork, and that bit there's the loin of pork. So we'll split those into two. So we count 6 bones. Other butchers may do 5. I do 6 here, and I do 6 on a lamb as well. Just the way I was taught. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There. So go to the top of the 7th, and then down to the 6th. And again, get the saw through there and straight down. And always, you don't get too much bone dust, but it's always a good habit to get into just to keep that clean. Otherwise, when that's hanging in the fridge, not so much with pork, because I wouldn't keep this for more than a week, but with a piece of beef, that's where all sort of the mould will grow over 3 or 4 weeks. So if you've got it clean, you won't get that bone dust. It'll just stay nice and dry and clean. So this is the loin of pork. Beautiful. This is the best end of the loin, and this is the loin with the undercut, as we call it. So if that was beef, that would be a T-bone steak. This is the neck end, or as we call it in the trade, or the shoulder of pork. This is on the bone. This weighs about 7 kilos. So when I take the bone out, as I mentioned earlier, we're going to lose about a third of that. So the first thing we do is score the crackling. And again, we don't want to use this instead of my own knife, so we don't blunt my own knife. This is just normal, just Stanley knife. And I'm scoring through deep enough to get through the crackling, but not too deep as to expose any meat. Now this, I use on we have an event side of the business, and I use this for pulled pork or slow roasted pork, and it's the best cut on the pig for that particular thing. Because it's got natural fat in, you can cook it slowly and you get the best crackling from it. And I would cook this 40 minutes at 180 and then drop it down to 140 and then cook it for a further 8 hours. Yes, that's right, 8 hours, nice and slow, and then it will all fall to pieces and you'll have the most beautiful crackling. But I mean really, if you want, you could just cook it on the bone. When I do it for events though, I take it off the bone. It's just easier to pull it all. But on the bone you do get really good flavour as well. So can you see it scored through nicely? Beautiful. And then I'm going to whip the two bones out. So you've got the backbone here. Just run your knife down here tight to the bone. There we go. And then once you've done a pulled pork, just serve it with some coleslaw, some baps, apple sauce of course is a must, and then barbecue sauce if you like it, but it's a real winner. And you'll probably get 20 to 25 really good portions out of this on a pulled pork. There you go, that's that backbone. There we go, and then you take the blade bone out. As this is the shoulder, it has a blade bone. You just follow the knife down here like so. Keep it tight to the bone. There you go, expose the bone and then round it. It's like you see the shape of it? There we go, and it comes out like that. Not like that, just like that. And then when you can get in under it, take the time, you don't want to cut yourself. There we go, and this bone comes out nice and slowly. There we go, that's the blade bone. Any excess meat, you can take that off. Anything you've missed, that can all come off. Beautiful. And then we go back on it, and any little bits of bone where I've sort of trimmed it quite tight, you get the odd little bit of bone left in there, like that. There we go. And I like to take this bit out as well, which is a bit of cartilage. There, can you see? That comes out. Any nasty bits really, like my father always said, you know, sort of trim it like you're trimming it for your girlfriend's mum. And then you can't go wrong really. So that's all beautifully trimmed. And if I was doing this for an event, so say I was doing it for a couple hundred people, say 8 of these, I would take the sheet of crackling off, put that to one side, I wouldn't tie it, and then I would just cook them slowly, as I say, for 8 to 10 hours, and then just pull it and then do the crackling separately on like a trivet with some sea salt rubbed in for 40 minutes at 180. Or it makes the most wonderful Sunday lunch. Yeah, absolutely beautiful. This you don't need the skewers for because it's not so big and it's already got that sort of cylindrical shape anyway. But can you see I'm putting in 3 sort of markers, one in the middle, one either side, and then in between I can tie the knots in between. Now we do have a separate knot tying video which you can see, which I'm sure is on YouTube somewhere. If not, we'll get it on there on the shorts so you can see it. But nice and tight. There we go, look, there it is there, look. So put that round there, hand open, hand close, and that goes through the hole, just like that. There we go, I'll show you one more time. Look, there we go. Close the hand. And then this, once you've made this slip knot, just get a bit of the string like that, make a loop, and then just tuck it in so it doesn't slip again. You're stopping the slip knot slipping, if that makes any sense. Beautiful, look at that. So I think this personally for me is my favourite cut on the whole animal, because you've got a bit of natural fat but it's still fairly lean and it keeps it moist while it's cooking, so it's doesn't dry out, and by far you get the best crackling. And as I said earlier, you must go to a good butcher's for this. Buy free range pork. You can't get this quality in the supermarket, sadly. It's mass produced, it'll be wet. And you've got to have it dry for the crackling. This is naturally dry because it's been slowly reared, free range, GM free, and it's beautiful. Look how dry that is. Can you hear that? The sound of that? That's the sound. That's the sound of free range pork. Look at that. Beautiful. And I'll just cut a cross section for you. I'd normally let this rest in the fridge, hang it up for a couple of days, and it's set and it's nice and firm all together, but I'll just show you a cross section for the video. Look at that. Beautiful, look at that. So you've got that natural fat there, which will give you great crackling. Supermarket pork tends to be too lean, and you need that little bit of fat as it's cooking to get you crackling. And look at that, you can tell it's going to eat beautifully already. There we go, so that's the boned and rolled shoulder of pork. And next we've got the loin of pork. I've switched, I don't know if you noticed, I've switched the loin of pork for the other side because this side's got a kidney in it. I wanted you to see the kidney for those people that love pork chops with kidneys. Got one here, and can you see it's all sort of marked out joints all the way down. I'll just show you a pork chop out the middle there with the kidney in. And you can see where in the slaughterhouse where they've slashed the kidney to check that it's healthy. Can you see they do that? They go along, the vet will come along and check all the animals once they've been slaughtered to check that they are as healthy as can be. So this is on the joint. This is quite a thick pork chop, so something like this I would cook it in the oven personally. I do it for about 25-30 minutes on a wire rack in the oven, and then halfway through I'll sort of turn it over with some tongs and cook the other side at 180 degrees in a fan oven. But I must admit, I'm not a big kidney fan myself, but I know some of you out there are, so you get the look at that, how fresh that is. And again, score the crackling, this is the best bit. And that's a lovely pork chop with the kidney, look at that, beautiful. And then this end, you can either roll this for a rolled loin of pork, which is a lovely cut. I'll just show you a few chops off of it. So this is what we call the best end of pork, which is beautiful. Look at that, lovely. And I like to take the chine bone off, and then it's easier on the plate to eat. You haven't got to fight with lots of bones. So I go down here. This process is called chining the bone. So you want to go through until just before you hit the meat. Can you see I'm slowing down now because I don't want to run the saw and tear the meat. And I've got through there, and I'm sort of angling the knife back that way, away from the eye of the loin. There we go. Can you see? Beautiful. And then take that off. Look at that, that's the backbone. You see you've got beautiful pork chops now. And look at these. I'm just going to cut a few to show you because they're so nice. There you go. So when that's on your plate, it's going to be easier to eat because you haven't got all this bone to fight with. There we go, lovely. Cut the last one. Just to show you. And you can do that, or you can use a chopper. Sometimes I use a chopper just to cut the crackling like that. Always, when you're using a chopper, never chop on the edge of the block because it's a softer wood here, whereas this is the harder wood. This is maple in the middle. And if you chop it, can you see over the years where people have chopped on the edge accidentally or not knowing, and you want to chop in the middle. You see, and you've got lovely crackling there. But this block here, I would say now is about 40 years old. This will see me out actually. If you buy a good quality block, you've got it for life, and look after it. There you go, so there's some pork chops. Beautiful. So here we go, we've got the belly of pork, where we get our belly pork from, or our ribs of pork. And we've got the hand of pork. And then on the end, we've got this trotter, which is a really good thing actually. You should always keep your trotters, because you split down the middle and you put that in a stock pot with a beef stock or chicken stock, and you get the most wonderful gelatine. It really helps. You split that down the middle, pop that into your stock pot, and you'll get a really gelatinous stock or bone broth. Beautiful. That's one thing you want to keep. And then what we're going to do is, on this occasion, I'm going to take out the ribs of pork from the belly. So these are what we call meaty ribs, not the baby back ribs. The baby back ribs are here. They're on the loin. If I can show you quickly, they'd be here. So the baby back ribs. Can you see? And without a lot of meat on them. But this is what I call the loin ribs, or the meaty ribs as we call them in the trade. So you mark it out, and then here you'll find a seam in here, and all you do is use the tip of the knife, follow down this seam. Again, I'm holding this taut, so it's really helping for me. The other thing you can do, again, get the block working in your favour, and just the weight, the natural weight of that now, that rack of ribs, is doing all the work for me. I'm just sort of holding it and just caressing the knife along that seam. And I've marked it out the other side, so any minute now I'll hit the end of that mark and it'll all come off for me. There you go, can you see? Perfect. So that is a full rack of ribs. Now, you can marinate that. You can put a lovely meat wrap on there. Meat rub. We've got our own, a Telly Friends meat rub, which is very nice. A barbecue rub I like to use. Or you can cut them individually into separate ribs. And I'll cut them through, and these are beautiful. They've got to be cooked slowly. Remember, it's off the belly of pork, so it's a tougher part of the animal, off the diaphragm of the pork. And here we go. And these are just wonderful. So I like to cook these, I like to marinate them in one of our meat rubs. The barbecue one is delicious. And then I will put them on a baking tray, a roasting tin, with a trivet or wire rack. Line them up like soldiers on that wire rack. Couple of cups of water underneath so they keep moist, and then I wrap the whole roasting tin in foil, and I'd cook that for three and a half hours at 140, low and slow, and it's just tender as butter. And you serve that with some beautiful coleslaw, anything you like really. I mean, I like it in the summer with salad, coleslaw, a glass of rosé, and it's absolutely delicious. So these are what we call the meaty ribs from the belly, well worth having a go in the summer. So this bit here is the belly of pork, which I've obviously decimated now for those ribs. So I just wanted to show you that because I think they're lovely. We take this bone out here, and this is a nice bit of fat which we'll use. Nothing will get wasted. If we have a very lean sausage, then I'd be tempted to put a bit of this in with the sausage. So we've got a lean leg and lean shoulder, which I use for my sausages. You can always do this, but to get the rind off, this is the best way I've found of doing it. Is to roll it up like that, and then cut it into sort of 3 pieces like that. Get the knife nice and sharp as you can. So when you're sharpening a knife with a steel, can you see I'm going down the same angle either side? And when you've done it for a while, you can just sort of listen to it. And if it's the same sound, you know you've got it right. So if it's, that's a different sound. But if you go like that, you can hear it, and it's a bit like playing a musical instrument. You know you've got it right. There we go. Just wipe that, any burrs off with your knife, with your cloth, and then we can whip off the skin. So again, I'm going underneath, slight angle, about that sort of angle, and I'm pulling and pushing at the same time. And then hopefully you're going to get that clean, and then that's beautiful. I mean, that beautiful back fat. In actual fact, we have a sausage here, which is a South African sausage called a boerewors. You have to roll your R's apparently. And this has a bit of pork fat with beef in it. So I use that for the boerewors, for our South African friends out there. And then we'll add to that lean beef. I use the blade of beef for that particular sausage. So it's nice and lean with the pork fat, and we put nutmeg, coriander, garlic, salt and pepper in there. And it's absolutely delicious. And then we sell those in the traditional way. I think I've got one here to show you actually, like that. So it's cooked in a coil, the boerewors, like that. That wasn't a sales plug, by the way. I just wanted to show you what we use this for, really. Traditional South African recipe, and they cook it on a thing, we call it a barbecue here. In South Africa they call it a braai vlees, which is barbecue in South African. And it's a beautiful place for those of you who've been out there. I went to Camps Bay once in Cape Town, absolutely fantastic, some great golf courses out there as well. And this is the hander pork. Traditionally in the old days people would cook this slowly. Again, a slow cut, and it would be a lovely roast dinner. This, you get a gland in here. I like to take that out. Every pig comes with that gland in the neck of pork. And then this we'd bone out again. So I'll bone it out for you. But traditionally it'd be cooked on the bone, slowly, for a Sunday roast. I mean, it's the sort of thing you could do low and slow, score it up. And again, sort of 8-10 hours on a low heat, be lovely. So this, I'm just going to try and find the bone here and then follow it down. Gosh, got lucky again. Finn. Big shout out to Finn here, my cameraman, who's a good lad. There we go. Just take the bone out, and then again, this meat can be used, if you trim it up, minced pork, things like that, makes really good minced pork. There we go, that takes the bone out, look at that, beautiful. So that's the hander pork boneless. And again, I'd probably take the skin off of this because I'm not going to roll this as a joint. I mean, years ago, back in the day, this was something you sold a lot of, but people don't really ask for, sadly, hander pork anymore. But I probably would like most things to, you know, keep going. It'll come back in fashion, I'm sure, one day. So cut that into manageable slices, and then again, I'm pulling with this hand and pushing with the knife, and the knife's fairly sharp, so it can come off quite easily. Can you see the skin coming off? And again, you could score these bits up here and make some crackling pork scratchings with it, you know, delicious. So we try not to waste anything. That's the key in this game. It's not about what you sell in any business, it's about what you waste. So there you go, that's the side of pork. It was roughly about 40 kilos when I started. We've probably lost a third of that. I reckon we've got 30 kilos here, just under a third. This is the ribs of beef, or the belly. I've done ribs on this occasion. Beautiful. The leg of pork, which I've boned and rolled. Showing you a cut through and showing you a cross section of it. This is the shoulder of pork, my favourite cut on the animal. Slow roast, 6, 8 hours, 10 hours if you want low, 140, delicious. This is the hock of pork off the leg, which I mentioned that the Filipinos, we cut it through for them and they make a wonderful dish with that. Or you can bone it out, whatever. We've got the loin of pork, a couple of pieces I've kept intact, but basically this is where we get our wonderful pork chops from. That's the fillet of pork in there, which goes into the leg, this end here. And we've got these wonderful pork chops, and I've scored some to show you the scoring. Absolutely delicious. And that's all the leftover meat, which I'll use in our wonderful pork sausages, Grandad's Special from 1931. That's the recipe, by the way, not the sausage. Listen, thank you very much for watching the channel and watching this new video of ours. I really appreciate your support. Tell your friends.